Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And joining us on Skype and the phone is Miriam Azizi, author, and we've had her on the show before. And from Israel, Moti, I don't have your last name, and please forgive me for that oversight. So welcome to our show.
Hi. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. All right. Well, Miriam, the reason I got you on the show today is you shared a story with me regarding this Canadian woman, and would you bring our listeners up to date on exactly what's going on with that?
I will, Michael. Let me give you a little background on this. You know from previous interviews that I wrote a book about being trapped in Israel and what happened, how my husband broke down and became no one. And subsequently never shut up about it. Lots of people have come forward who are foreign dual nationals and Israelis with the same story. 3 weeks ago, I was contacted through my website by a Canadian lady called Hannah Gann. She made Aliyah, stupidly, emigrated to Israel with her mum and dad in December, on the 1st of December. On the 24th of December, she realized she'd made a mistake and she wanted to go home. She's 5-6 months pregnant now, and she has 2 young children. And her father didn't like her choice of lifestyle, not being religious. So when she tried to leave, he put a stop order on her, involved the social services, and tried to take her children from her. She couldn't leave on her Israeli ID, so she renewed the passports he'd stolen from her and tried to leave in February and was stopped at the airport and refused to exit. She then, Moti helped her. We found her a nice place to stay while we worked out what to do. And within an hour of speaking to her parents, who insisted she would never leave Israel ever, the police swooped down on her like a siege and took her to the police station and took her children from her. At the moment, she cannot see her children, she cannot leave the country, and she's trapped in Israel, a real live Canadian citizen.
Well, what's rather interesting, lately we've been seeing all this bashing of Muslim nations going on because they treat women poorly and women have no rights. And here we have this story coming out of Israel and seems to have completely escaped the notice of the American corporate media. The idea that a father can involve the government in preventing his daughter from going back to Canada.
Absolutely. I want to just call out to all the people that who are your listeners who may be Zionists, because we get a lot of flack from them. They believe in the state of Israel, but they don't care what happens to the Israeli people. I'm anti-Semitic, I'm terrible. But the point here is, if you believe in the state of Israel, for example, then it's incumbent on you to make sure they all stay alive. And that they're well and that they don't have their children stolen from them by the authorities. And if you hate the state of Israel, you can still care about the people inside who are all desperate to get out. So this is insane. It's absolutely insane.
It sounds like the old Soviet Union where, no matter how miserable the people were, they were never allowed to leave. And it sounds like the government of Israel is basically going down that same path.
Going down that path. They've been down this path for so many years. It's unbelievable. And I'm round the clock with this woman, keeping her sane. And yesterday she was told she has to take an evaluation to prove she's not a danger to her own children. She can see them in a dingy, disgusting contact center for 60 minutes. And that's it, why? Because she was told, and we have it recorded on our Facebook page, which is Trapped in Israel, she was told she lost her children for daring to leave the country. So she's punished. She can't leave. She's pregnant. She can't see her children because she dared not to want to live there.
Boy, that is... Okay, Moti, first of all, what is your full name?
Well, my full name is Moti Leibel.
Okay.
Leybel.
And what can you add to the story from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, once Marianne called me and said, listen, there is a person that wants to leave the country, can you escort her to the airport? So, I did. I did not imagine in my worst nightmares that people can be stopped from going out with absolutely no reason. And I was pretty shocked. So I decided not to leave this case alone and keep on escorting this girl, Hannah Gana. I mean, listen, she's 36 years old. She can do whatever she wants. She already raised the kid for a few years, and nobody said anything. I mean, this is amazing how easy things can turn here, and, they can just stop people from going out. And since we published her story, many people are coming forward and saying, listen, it happened to me. I was trapped in Israel for many years. There is many people that made Aliyah before.
And also many Americans with no Israeli passport either. We're talking about you can be Israeli, dual national, or purely foreign national. And if someone in Israel wants to make a false complaint, then that's the end of you. The social services, the courts, the police, they're on you, and you can go to jail for nothing. You can never leave. You're bankrupted. You're broken. And this is happening all the time. All the time.
Yeah, Yeah, listen, basically, in this case, it's her father, but it's not only the father. Any person, any neighbor can call the social services and tell them, listen, I think this woman, this man is abusing the kids, and that's it. That's it for the person. I mean, they're going to come. The welfare in Israel, the social services are very happy that things like that happen because they can get the merchandise, which is our kids. We talked about it before, if you remember, Michael.
Yes, I remember.
Once the social services get a complaint, they jump on the bargain and they just take the kids. And, it doesn't matter what happened with them after that. But, I mean, this is, I still can't believe what's going on here. I live here and I never seen things like that. It's absolutely.
Well, it occurs to me that there may be a couple of overlapping issues here. I mean, in the United States, the Child Protective Services are very abusive, and they look for any excuse to take children away from their parents because the more children they take away, the bigger their budgets become. So they're financially incentivized to separate children from their parents. The other issue, of course, is that Israel's always talking about the demographic bomb, where they're concerned that Jews will become a minority in their own country, and so there may, in fact, be a policy of just anybody who comes in, keep them in, so don't let them out, so that the population of Jews continues to be driven upward. But the point I really think is important here is we're always hearing about how the government of Israel is abusive of the Palestinians, and most people don't understand the government of Israel is also abusive of their own Jewish population that they claim to be in existence to protect and take care of, and very clearly they're not treating their own people very well at all, and this does need attention in the American media.
This needs massive attention, massive attention. Yeah, it does. We both agree, Motti and I. And we are working on social media storms and trying to get this out now because this woman has a window of opportunity to fly home before she gives birth, and that child will be an Israeli. And at that point, she will never get out because right now, conceived in Canada, it will be born, she, in Israel, and become, as the social worker told her, the property of Israel. The property of Israel.
All right.
Yeah,
well, listen.
They don't even know her. Ask your listeners to go onto our page and listen to the 30-minute call that she made to social services, who had no reason whatsoever to give her children to the abusive parents who she's made 3 police complaints against for hurting her children.
All right, we got to take a break.
Actually currently have them.
All right, we got to take a 4-minute break for commercials. We'll be back here again with Miriam and Modi about this travesty taking place. We'll be right back.
Corporations, Wall Street and the banks rule our politicians. They don't deserve our thanks. Then they tell us the banks are too big to fail, when the banksters all need to be in jail.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about the very tragic story of Hannah Gan. This is a Canadian woman who moved to Israel, saw that it really wasn't what she thought it was going to be, decided she wanted to return home. Her father filed a complaint, which resulted in the children being taken away, and Hannah is being prevented from leaving Israel to return to Canada. And my question at this point is, where's the Canadian government in all this? Because if Hannah Gan were being prevented from leaving, say, Iran or Iraq or Syria, I'm sure the Canadian government would be kicking up a huge stink about how these countries are abusing women. But where are they with the situation of Hannah being trapped in Israel?
Michael, she made an inquiry back to Canada on the 24th of December, 3 weeks after she arrived, that she wanted to leave. She was SOSing the Canadian embassy by January. They said, okay, we'll sort you out. Once she was trapped, I was on the phone to them, she was on the phone to them, but they can't help because Israel do not have a treaty that allows anyone inside to leave on their own passport. So if she got this ID when she arrived, she's now primarily an Israeli, and there's no money back guarantee, 30 days, don't like the product. She's there, end of, and they can't help her, or they won't help her.
Well, we know that certainly the government of the United States of America is notorious for turning a blind eye to Israeli abuses against Americans, whether it's Rachel Corrie or Furkan Dogan. And it seems like the Canadian government is just as subverted by Israel as that of the United States of America. And for the Canadians listening to this show, and there are a lot of you who are, this is the kind of support you can expect from your government should you fall under Israeli jurisdiction and they decide that you are not allowed to leave. Again, this idea that Israel has no treaties allowing people to leave on their own native passports, that sounds to me like confirmation that there's an official policy to have a one-way door for Jews to come into Israel but not be allowed to leave in order to fight off the growing demographic imbalance that we're seeing in there. But again, the point I want to make here is that we're well aware of the abuses of the Israeli government against the Palestinians under their control. And here we're seeing something that the corporate media has never mentioned before, the Israeli government abuses against their Jewish population.
The Jewish, yeah. I have Americans lined up to talk to you who are not Israeli citizens. One has just escaped now after 4 years of torture in that country, imprisoned for nothing. He's just now in California, and he's ready to tell the world that he's had to leave without his children, not an Israeli. So Motti can tell you how the system works. They take the dad, they go to the mum, and then they take the kids, don't they, Motti?
Yeah, absolutely. But first I want to speak about the abusive of the Israeli government on Israeli citizens. You are absolutely right. It feels, we have a general feeling here that our government is, it's so corrupted that, the corruption finally touches us, the simple people. So financially, we are financially abused. We are tax abused, taxes, and they taking. As I told you before, they're taking our kids away. They're separating the fathers from the kids. They're donating to this issue. They actually want to separate the fathers from the kids, so then they can, the mother and the kids will be all alone. And then they're taking the kids from the mothers. What happened to Hannah is, unfortunately, don't happen only to foreign citizens. It happens here. We get it all the time. And millions of people have no exit orders in Israel only because of debt or any kinds of lawsuit.
A million, I think.
Yeah.
Listen, Michael. I have some debt, okay? and I cannot leave Israel. I'm trapped here. Well, while I was speaking to Marianne, during the time, she explained to me that it's not like that all over the world. I mean, if she has that, and, she can leave and she can go wherever she wants. We cannot do this.
That almost makes common sense because, if you're in a country whose economy is in terrible shape like the United States and you've got debts to pay, obviously you can go to another country with a better economy and sell your skills and get the money to pay your debts. But if you're kept inside the country with the bad economy, you're never going to get those debts paid off, and it's a very short-sighted situation. We only have about 3 more minutes here, Miriam. I've got your Facebook page linked from whatreallyhappened.com.
I ask your people, go onto the Trapped in Israel page. Right now, social services are blackmailing Hannah to get an apartment on the promise she'll get her kids, which she won't because the judges said no. We need to raise funds for her to get her out. We need to raise funds for everybody else, and we need to make change. You can read all about it there, and we just have to stop her from, being trapped. We have to save her.
Well, I think what's really interesting is that recording of the social services worker saying that if Hannah's baby is born in Israel, it becomes the property of the government. And it seems like the government of Israel is basically returning to an age of slavery where you are our property. And that, I think, is very dangerous for all the people of Israel, regardless of their religion.
Well, please ask your listeners to get on that page and help us to help her, because it could happen to any of you.
Well, I'm personally not planning on visiting Israel anytime soon, and I'm sure they would be happy to be rid of me if I did. But it betrays a terrible mindset of the Israeli government to view its population as property, as herd, as asset. We have about 1 minute left to go. Miriam, what do you want to share with our listeners?
We're having a documentary made, and you are going to get the whole scoop on it. We're going to be videoing every day that I'm there, and I'll be there soon.
All right. Modi, anything you want to add to that?
No, just thank you very much for the opportunity to let the world hear what we are, the citizens of Israel, are suffering from the government of Israel. That's it.
Yeah, that's an important message to get on out there, because that's an aspect of life in Israel that is absolutely not being touched on by America's corporate media, that Israel's government, and this is not anti-Semitic to say this, we're talking about the actions of a government against its own people, regardless of whether they're Jewish or Muslim or Christian.
Correct. But how could it be anti-Semitic?
I live in Israel, and I am absolutely not anti-Semitic. I cannot be. I am Jewish.
All right. Well, listen, we're about out of time here. We're going to have you guys back on in the very, very near future. Please keep me up to date on progress with Hannah, because it is a tragic story. And where is the government of Canada on all of this? They're not going to protect their own citizens just because they're inside Israel at the time. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you, Miriam and Modi, and we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.